The cities of Tshwane and Johannesburg's aggressive debt collection drive is yielding results, from massive hotels to government entities. If you have outstanding debt, your water or electricity will be cut off. Hundreds of millions of rands already collected so far, but with bills in the billions, one wonders how it was allowed to accumulate to this point. Does it mean that all this time defaulters have been getting free services? Well, let's unpack this now with Khomotso Letsatsi, Chief Officer of Fiscal Policy and Economic Growth at SALGA. That's the South African Local Government Association. And it is, of course, an autonomous organisation that represents the municipalities. Thank you so much for your time. I have to ask, I noted on your website that you're based in Pretoria, your offices. Have you paid your bills?
So certainly as SALGA, we do pay our bills. We'll have to lead by example, being the voice of local government.
Good to hear. Do you support this disconnection drive? Do you think it's a good thing to do?
Sadly, we have been advocating for this as SALGA, and this debt has been building over the years. You would be aware that for a couple of years now, there's been a noise around monies owed to Eskom by municipalities, and we insisted as SALGA that for the completeness of the engagement and the debate, we need to address the issue of debt owed to municipalities. And we're happy that it's been elevated to this level, because that's one thing we've been saying over time. I mean, if you look at the end of September, the debt is basically sitting at around 265 billion. Of course, about 169 billion of that is owed by a household debt, and about over 50 billion is basically owned by business enterprises, and around 19 billion is basically owed by government departments. So there has been various interventions, even at an IGR level, but definitely it's a basic business principle. If you consume services, you need to pay for those services, and municipalities then have a responsibility to follow up on data that actually do not meet their obligation towards municipalities, because failure to do that will certainly affect the financial sustainability of municipalities. And we've seen it in the increase in the number of financially distressed municipalities. I mean, we've got about 257 municipalities. About 163 municipalities are financially distressed because of the failure of municipal consumers to pay what they basically consumed from municipalities.
You know, I mean, you were just saying that this problem of debt not being, and in case where it's where Eskom supplies directly, they're looking at the rates issue and cutting off water. But what I don't understand, I can understand a poor community battling to pay. I can understand a growing culture of non-payment on an individual level. But I cannot understand why government departments are not paying. Do you understand?
Definitely not. And we've always said as SALGA that charity begins at home. And we look at all customers exactly the same. So no special treatment, whether your household or your business or government. And that's why we support this move, which is actually even aligned to the resolution that was taken by the NEC of SALGA, to encourage municipalities without fear or favor to basically enforce credit control. So we certainly support what is basically happening to the city of Tshwane, because failure to do so, and we've seen there's a positive correlation between the inability to collect from customers and the cash flows of municipalities, and consequently impacting on their ability to meet their obligation towards their creditors. And that on its own has actually threatened the business models of your like of Escoms and water boards. But if customers don't pay, then it impacts on the ability of municipalities to deliver services as they are able to basically pay for their bulk services.
As you said, charity begins at home. You don't understand why government doesn't pay. And it was, maybe this gives us some clues. And this was around the issue of the police building at the Wachthuis building in Pretoria that was cut off in Tshwane. And it seems that the police don't own the building, neither does the Department of Public Works, but the Department of Public Works leases the building for the police, and then they pay rent to the landlord, and it is the landlord's job to cover the rates and taxes and that through and the electricity through that payment. Do you think that it's that complicated relationship that has either created corruption or perhaps compliance that is part of the answer as to why quite a few government entities have simply not paid their bills until they're forced, as they are being now?
So hence I said to you, it's actually a very complex kind of topic, because there's a lot of underlying drivers. And I think this is a case in point where tenants actually pay to the landlord, and the landlord does not meet their obligation basically towards the municipality. But the relationship is basically between the municipality and the landlord, irrespective of whether tenants basically pay. So based on the agreements and lease agreements that tenants enter into the landlord has got obligations to basically pay for services that would have been levied basically to tenants. And it's for the parties that are in those agreements that would have to manage that relationship, to basically manage the risks as we basically see them. But it's amongst the complex issues in terms of making sure that they basically follow through in terms of what accrues to the landlord, and consequently municipalities basically being paid.
Yeah, as you say, it's complex, but at the end of the day, it's quite simple. If you're not paying your bills, you're going to you're going to lose your services. Yes. And thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. Khomotso Letsatsi, she's Chief Officer of Fiscal Policy and Economic Growth at the South African Local Government Association.